This is John Carpenter from the Los Angeles Free Press, and I'm going to be talking to two members of Alice Cooper himself and Neil Smith. Is the rock scene in Ann Arbor all that driving? You just told me a little while ago that you had decided to refine yours down, take a little bit of the pulsation out of it a bit.
Yeah.
Why so?
Well, I think it's like, as it is now, there's enough of that reaction. It seemed to me before that there wasn't enough of that reaction on stage, enough of that violence reflection back, you know. But like, say after this Kent thing, you know, and things like that, it seems like the theater, you don't have to reproduce that on a stage, because it's already there in the street, and you can't reproduce it any better than the reality that it is, you know, that people getting shot here, you know, nobody can play that person, you know. He's dead, you know, so like that's the actual theater of it, you know. You can't make it any more real than that, so we wanted to take our type of television, this society feeling, and make it more refined into another direction, to a more positive direction, you know. It could go into a more of a sexual direction, you know.
Why don't you explain to people who haven't seen you what exactly you were doing? Like the thing with the chickens blew my head. What exactly was your show like?
Well, it was just a spontaneous. At that point, the one we've just about stopped doing now is it was at a point of complete television. That was our influence, you know, our television influence. We're being bombarded all the time, you know, by everything, you know. And the cities were such a piece of kinetic art. You know, they just start you going like this. You're in New York City, you know, and your brain is going like that, and so you write like that, you know, and so you react on stage. I think in reality, if people were really truthful, that's the way they would react, you know, the way we do. Only on stage, of course, we make it more theatrical, you know. Say, we'll go overboard in doing a point. You know, it's like they're throwing chickens, you know. It was just a thing, you know. We found a chicken, you know, so let's throw it out in the audience, you know, and like. You just use these every day.
What happened the first time you threw the chicken out in the audience?
The first time? What was the first time we threw it out? I think. Oh, it was in London with the Mothers, London, Ontario, and.
Oh yeah, that's.
There was it was outside, you know, and there was like a thing over top of where we were playing. So I took this chicken and I swung it around like this, and I threw it up in the air, and I didn't know there was a top on this thing. The thing just smashed, you know. It was like, and it dripped down. And then from the next night, we had to play again, you know. And people were running up and said, "I heard you bit the head off a chicken and sucked its blood out," you know. And then
where was it the audience tore the chicken apart?
That's happened a few times. Yeah. You know, that's happened in
San Bernardino.
San Bernardino, they did that. Which was really strange. I didn't think that would happen in San Bernardino.
Chicken pluckers?
Yeah, I didn't know what, you know, because San Bernardino, I didn't think there was any type of, you know, I thought they'd be another Impress Me audience, you know.
Right, full of Pat Boones.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they really got
into it.
I
paid, Impress Me. But, like, but they weren't. They were really, you know, they were high energy. And so they just took this chicken and ripped it to pieces. You get them built up, you know. You affect all their senses, you know, in so many ways. You spray wind on them, and they're affected so much that they get built up, this energy built up, you know. And then they have to release it somehow, either standing or yelling or screaming. And so we gave them like a vehicle, you know, something to do something with, you know. So they just took it, and what they do, they just ripped it apart, you know. And, you know, the time I looked down, I went, you know, what happened if I would have fallen down it?
Have you ever had any violence from the audience come up and direct itself toward you? Any of you on the stage?
Yeah, we've had. We used to have that. You know, look forward to it because it would happen every time.
Like an extreme anti-reaction to what you were doing.
Well, yeah, and the people that would do it weren't, you know, short hairs or things like that. They were like, we got this guy jumped up, hair down, you know, to his shoulders, big guy, and he walks up on stage and he says, "Hey, you want to fight?" You know, and I thought he was kidding or something, and he wasn't.
That was at the Shrine.
Yeah, that was at the Shrine.
Year or so,
you know,
here.
We played here, yeah.
Oh.
And then I said, "Wow, that's pretty." You know, I had to have all these people. I pretend like I didn't notice. You know, I'm pretty brave. But that happens a lot. People overreact to it, and they don't know which way to channel that energy. So they jump up on the stage, and then once they get up there, they don't know what to do. You know, they're like trapped. You know, then they're the spotlight. Then, and that makes a theater right there. Then, you know?
Right.
That's so absurd. You see somebody then when you see them that they realize that they're trapped on stage. Well, it wasn't actually under the name of Alice Cooper, but I could see this character, you know, this Alice Cooper character, and I thought that it was a good character. In fact, I started writing as a play type of thing, you know. But then we had started into the group then, you know, like the Beatles had started, you know, and we thought that was really, you know, and all of a sudden it gave a direction, you know, to the whole thing. Instead of writing it into a play, then we started. You know, like we started directing it towards that. You know, like from the very beginning, 5 years ago, it started theatrically. You know, and it just always has been there. That that adrenaline, you know, that makes it theatrical. And so what we did was we took that and like we just kept molding it, you know, and using ideas and seeing what kind of reactions we could get from people in the audience, you know. And it's still the good thing about it is that it's always growing. The image is always growing and taking on different aspects, you know. And people keep putting different values on Alice Cooper all the time. Our audience keeps, you know, they come here and they're expecting to see this, you know, and we know that, you know, and pretty much, and so we'll like completely change it just to give them a whole new look at it, you know. And that's why it's really interesting. I say anything that affects an audience, you know, that completely affects them, you know, and when they go home and they don't know what it was or they enjoyed it, if you could channel that into a positive direction, you could really have a really strong theater. I read this book by Gore Vidal, Sex, Death, and Money. Did you read that? It was a series of his compositions, which were really interesting. It put America right in its own proportion, you know. And he says that sex, death, and money, of course, are the three most commercial things in the world, you know. And like it seemed to me like we had already used the aspect of violence, you know, like we were talking about before. And in order to channel it more positively, I think the only way you could go would be sexual, you know. And so using a very tasty sexual type of thing on stage, you know, not that raw type of thing. And there would be a raw element there, just because it's rock music, you know. But of course it could be handled, you know, to a point where you could be using certain symbols on stage that would really affect them psychologically. We're also doing we're going to try to recreate a thunderstorm on stage, you know.
Well, that snowstorm worked pretty well.
Yeah, it did.
That was very good. Sometimes
it was very appropriate for you to try.
Yeah, for that night, it was perfect.
Well, that, you know, the whole feather thing is like a complete thing. It seems like the audience, when we first go out there, the audience is like, they don't know how to react to us at first, the image, you know, and the music is, of course, not what they've ever heard before. And they're expecting to see this, you know, and they're not quite sure what they're going to see. And so the whole set is like built on an anxiety thing, where they're expecting something, you know, and they can feel that tenseness, because we have that tenseness and we project it. And so like at the end, the feathers act as like the orgasm, you know. It builds up and builds up, the last song does, you know, it's an electronic thing, and it builds up and everybody's going like this, and then when the feathers break open, you know, the people just completely, it's their release right there. That gives them their excuse to go, oh, you know, finally. In Canada, they always send the Humane Society down. You know, we go to the border and they don't ever check us for dope or anything. The Humane Societies are.
Do you have any chickens?
Says you can't use any Canadian chickens.
We bought our own thing.
And Canadian chickens, by the way, are better chickens on stage. They're more theatrical.
Some of them can fly.
Lennon had such a strong presence that it was really something.
What was the crowd like there? They came to see a rock and roll revival.
They were great. That was about the best crowd I think we ever played for.
One of the greatest crowds.
Toronto really is just about the best audience. Because
you played in a football stadium of some sort.
And there was a lot of people there. Let's see, Jerry Lee Lewis was there, and Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry got 28 standing ovations or something, you know, because it was rock and roll revival.
Right.
And then we backed up Gene Vincent, which was really a kick, you know.
Really?
Backing up Gene Vincent. Rockin' Robin, we did Rockin' Robin.
Bebop-a-looba.
Bebop-a-loola.
All right.
What do you think of John Yoko's theater, what they're doing? The Bagism.
I haven't heard what they're doing now. I heard the last thing they did, they got their hair cut. I think it's you know, legitimate, you know. I think the whole thing is legitimate because it's funny, you know. Every time I hear something about them, you can't put it down because it's funny. Nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, I always thought it was Lennon's sense of humor.
Yeah,
it had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. It's a black type of humor, you know, but it's.
Would you like to get into big theatrics that way? I mean, would you like to say sooner or later get a theater on Broadway and have an unlimited budget and just really freak?
I say a total environment show, you know. I mean, not just total environment light show. I mean, like using every sense. You know,
it would have to be something you
total
could
sensory
also box up and
bombardment.
take with you.
Yeah, right. You know, and
well, eventually taking on the road like that would be a neat thing.
It's like the inevitable thing for Alice Cooper to do is that, you know, and so that's what we're actually working towards now.
When we played at that one show we were just talking about a long time ago in London, Ontario, with the mothers, the first time we used the chickens, there were quite a few 13 and 14-year-olds.
And they were so receptive
they flipped
to it.
out.
Yeah, well, these are kids who have been sitting in front of TVs and doing their homework, talking on the phone, doing all those things at the same time, you know.
Yeah, they're more sped up than we are, you know, because like every generation's living faster, you know, and so they're more sped up and they're learning faster, and they can really appreciate the values, you know, that's going on stage, and they don't have anything, you know, they're so clear. Kids are so clear that they can pick up all these things much more you know, than say a person like our age, you know, 22.
You got stopped in Canada coming across one time, didn't you? You were wearing all of the makeup from the
Yeah.
night before.
Oh, that's when we went through in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And we had that outrageous thing, and they went through all of our luggage, which looks like, I don't know, you know,
Yeah,
like
it's
gypsy
ridiculous.
bags.
They
or
were doing it at
something.
the end. They got really into it, and they were going, "What's this?" You know, they were like asking you some of these ridiculous little things, you know, that we pick up.
Just
all
little
the
trinkets
places, you
that
know.
you from everywhere.
And it's
they
just
were
like it was
amazed,
just
you know.
like they were like kids on Christmas. They were picking things up and going, "Wow, hey, look at this, Harry!"
Yeah, really.
You know?
The guys
There's a
were
tie
walking
with a
around.
naked lady on it, and their tits light up. You know?
So you guys were already in a band, you two?
We started the band on the track team. We were on the track team. And Dennis and I were both in the art class and journalism together, and we painted murals. I mean, that's what we did in the summertime, before the Beatles came out. And when the Beatles came out, then all of a sudden we kind of saw something that we wanted to do. But we were on the track team and put the earwigs together as a parody of the Beatles during the Letterman's Club talent show. Beetle wigs. They were selling Beetle wigs at the mall. We all had Beetle wigs on.
So we wanted to be a bug, like the beetle was a bug, but
Yeah.
we were a weird bug, an earwig, and we wore wigs, beetle wigs, so get it?
Now the odd thing about this was, and I'm not making this up, in our journalism class, if you were late with a project, if your column came in late, they put you in the guillotine. We had a guillotine in the journalism room where you had to be on the stock that worked. And so when we did this show, we said, let's put the guillotine on stage.
Yeah,
So the guillotine was literally on stage.
It was the Halloween dance. We built, we made spider webs out of clothesline in the corners of the stage. We used our mural painting abilities to make some coffins out of cardboard. So we had this guy in the coffin, and we didn't know anything about music, so we didn't have a set list. So we would discuss what song we were going to do.
On stage, yeah.
And so while we were discussing what song we were going to do next, Ray Sadowski would come out with all his makeup on and do some shtick, and then he'd get back in the coffin when we were ready to play the next song.
He kind of looked like Zachary. It was kind of a Zachary takeoff.
Very
you know.
Zachary.
He'd come up and he'd go, "Why don't you guys do foot stomping?" We'd say, "Okay." So the theatrical thing was built in. We did from the very, very beginning. That was built into what, I don't know what it was in the DNA.
It's just every night was Halloween from then on.
Glenn is the guy who's taking guitar lessons. He joined.
And he could play guitar, and John Tatum could play guitar. So we had two guys that could play guitar. We didn't have a bass player. Dennis says, "I'll learn to play bass." And John Spear ended up being a pretty good drummer. Yeah, a pretty good drummer.
Is this the Nas album?
This was the Earwigs.
This is still the Earwigs.
Earwigs.
Very first, yeah.
Yeah.
Where did Mike come in?
Mike came in later on when John Tatum got to the point where he really had to make a decision over his girlfriend or us. And his girlfriend won out, and we knew Mike. We've heard of Mike Bruce. He was in another band, Wildflowers.
Yeah, the Trolls.
Or the Trolls or something like that.
They had orange guitars, so we remembered them.
Yeah, and he had an amp,
And a truck.
which was big.
And a truck.
Yeah, and so we got him, and he could play, and he could sing, and he could write, and everything like that. So I mean, it was a really good combination.
And he bought John Tatum's pants from the National Shirt Shop.
Yeah.
That was one of the requirements.
Yeah,
The horn's tooth.
yeah, that's right.
We found
Used pants.
we found these pinstripe pants that you couldn't find in those days.
Yeah.
And they were all similar, but all different. You know, of course, what we didn't realize is that you had to be 2 feet away to see the pinstripes on it, but we thought this is our new look.
Yeah.
So then John Tatum quit, so that was part of the deal, that Michael had to buy
Here's
John
your
Tatum's
pants.
pants.
You bought his exact same
But you know, back
No,
in those
I bought
days,
his pants.
in those days, so you have to remember, there was it was dangerous to go out. We had to go out as a group. When nobody could go out by themselves because you would get killed. I mean, there was Dallas Taylor. Remember Dallas Taylor and his friend?
Yeah.
His friend got beat
Yeah,
to death
beat-
by
beat,
cowboys
yeah.
Coming out of Mr. Lucky's.
We were like Siamese quintuplets.
Yeah.
Remember the CYO up in Flagstaff? The only thing that the Indians and Cowboys could agree on is kill the long hairs, and we were the long hairs.
Right.
They were lined up outside the club waiting for us to come
Right.
out.
And in Tucson, same thing. We played the VIP in Tucson. Now this is a great story because this is a really true story. The guy that that hired us, we called him Bananas because he was crazy. He was, you know, hey, there's a bunch of guys outside. He breaks a bar stool and says, here.
He had the cigar.
You know, he said, let's fight our way out. I said, aren't we a band? You know, okay. Anyways,
Fight our way out.
Glenn's standing there. The greasers are here. The Mexican kids are here. They're fighting each other to see who gets to kill us, you know. And we're playing, and one of the greasers' girlfriends come up, you know, with a puffed up hair and chewing gum, and she goes, play Louie Louie. And Glenn, being Glenn, takes a cigarette. It was like this between her cleavage, right? Takes a butt out, and she's, oh, and the greaser goes, oh. That's cool.
I thought we were dead, but when Glenn did that,
Glenn
we became
put his cigarette out in
heroes.
the girl's chest. The greasers saw that and went, okay, we're on your side. So the greasers line up in front of the stage like this, and that was a brawl. These two, then they were our protection. But it was all because Glenn looked down and went, well, we're going to get killed anyways here. They recognized Glenn as a greaser with long hair, and they went, okay, he's one of us. Yeah. So that saved our butts.
But the policy of this club, when we first showed up, the owner said, keep playing until they start breaking up the furniture, and then get in the back room. We're like, you don't have to tell us twice.
So later on, we get these checks from Bananas. Later on, we realize it's Joseph Bananos. It was Bonanno's son who ran the club. And he loved us because we, you know, we played, we made him money and everything like this, and he liked the idea of fighting his way out.
What's the transition from earwigs to NAS?
Earwigs to spiders.
Spiders.
Spiders,
to NAS.
The spiders now were the. Now, this is where we had the world at our footstep at the time. We're all in high school. We're all on the track team, 4-year letterman. So, and we have an unbeatable track and cross country team. So we're the stars of the school. The only team that's undefeated is our team, right? And we have the #2 record in town. But don't blow your mind, because we're the Spiders, and we're playing at the VIP club, opening for the Yardbirds and the Hollies. By this time, we're drawing 1,000 people a night just by ourselves.
Who's in the Spiders?
That's
John Tatum and John Spear and Alice and I and Glenn.
So we were on top of the world. We ran the high school at that point because not only were we the athletes, but we were the #1 band in town. It was this weekend, the Spiders will be playing 19th Nervous Breakdown, you know, at the VIP, and we would draw 1,000 people a night, 2,000 people. So we had like cash, $100 a piece in our pocket. You know.
But that's because Jack Curtis, who ran the VIP, had affiliations. He knew how to promote, and so when we came to him and did an audition, he liked us, but he said that name's got to go, the earwigs. So he thought of another insect, which was a spider.
And it was better for us. We all were all black, and my dad made a big web behind us. You know, a fluorescent
back to
green
the web that we did at the Halloween dance.
And we did all Rolling Stones and Yardbirds and songs like that. I mean, but we were really good at that. We could really imitate those bands really well.
And we built our own stage called the Spider Sanctum, Sanctum, Sanctum.
But I mean, I'm telling you, it was a success. We were the hottest band in town, and then decided, well, we're good enough to go to LA now.
Before you went to LA, you put out a couple of singles here, right?
Yes.
And who put them out?
Well, it was, the first one was Why Don't You Love Me, which was a song out of Ferry Cross the Mercy, wasn't it?
The Blackwells.
The Blackwells.
Blackwells.
And we recorded it here in town. We went to see this movie starring Gary and the Pacemakers called Ferry Cross the Mercy. And there was a band called the Blackwells in there. They did a song called Why Don't You Love Me, had a harmonica in it. It was kind of a nice little pop song. And we listened to that and said, why don't we cover that?
And the flip side was Hitchhike, which Alice, well, it wasn't Alice, it was Vinny. we did the best version in the world besides the Rolling Stones version, which was not as good as the original.
Right.
So we were in third place because we were the third people to do one.
Who put the records out?
It was Jack Curtis and his label.
You're on 7th Street.
But that record didn't get any play. Don't Blow Your Mind was #2 in Phoenix. And that was a song that we recorded in Tucson on Copper State Records with a guy named Casey, had his own studio. And we probably did that record for 2 months. But Don't Blow Your Mind came out, and it was the only thing that kept it from being #1 was Good Vibrations. by the Beach Boys.
It was a hit in the Southwest. We played in Fort Huachuca. They hired us, and then when we showed up and they got a look at us, they said, "There's no way you guys are playing." But the crowd was all, ready for a show, so they finally let us go on. But when we played "Don't Blow Your Mind," they all went crazy. So
you heard that on the radio. We head to LA because we win a Battle of the Bands concert, and the prize is a trip to LA, and all expenses paid. Da 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 da. We win it. The guy disappears, of course. And I said, "Well, we won it. We should go." Anyways, we go to LA, and I mean, it's like mice in New York City. We're just like.
We had like $300
we didn't have any
or
money.
something.
We slept in Griffith Park.
We searched all day, and then we were exhausted. And we were in Griffith Park talking about what are we going to do, right? And there was this guy sitting behind us, and he goes, "We got to find a place." He goes, "I've got a house."
Well, he didn't say it like that. He said, "I have a house."
Right, just some stranger. So we follow him back to this place. We parked the truck out front.
Okay.
Right? When he'd go to work, we take all of his furniture, move it to the sides.
Yeah,
right.
and rehearse.
Then we bring in equipment, rehearse all day, and then put it back in the truck. Put all of his furniture back. By the time he came home, and Charlie and I, Charlie Carnell, our light guy, slept in the closet, and we just slept wherever.
But you finally came out of the closet. I remember at one point.
Yeah, this is pre-dope.
This was the NAS.
We were living in LA. That was we didn't have to go home to our parents. It was great.
This is pre-Neil, right? This is
this is still the NAS.
This is still the NAS.
Yeah.
So how long is the NAS in LA?
The NAS was in LA for actually we were the house band at the Cheetah.
Yeah.
At the Cheetah Club, which was a big deal.
It was the summer of '67.
And we were like, that was a huge deal because the Cheetah Club held 6,000 people. And we played every weekend, and it was always the Pink Floyd played with us, the Doors, but we opened for everybody there. We kind of had a real notorious image there, but we were the house band. We got paid.
Were you theatrical? What were you looking
Very. And then we found out about Todd Rundgren's NAS. And we went, uh-oh, now we got to get another name. We always had our own style. And I think that that's what made us notorious. Even without the theatrics, there was a natural inbred theatricality to the band. We would get auditions, and it was always right after Spirit. At 3 in the morning, Randy California and one of the best bands ever, we were always on right after them.
And they would dash all of our hopes.
Because they were so good. They were
bald-headed drummer again.
They were so damn good that it was ridiculous. And we would go on then and go, okay, it's 3:30 in the morning now and there's nobody here, let's go. And we would play our songs. And they'd go, thank you, get out of here.
Early 1968, we find out that Todd Rundgren has a band called the NAS, and they have a record deal from Philadelphia. They have a record deal, and the unwritten law of rock and roll is that if you have the name of a band and somebody inks a deal, you've got to change.
If they're literally one step ahead of you, they own the name.
They own the name
because they're already ahead of you.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, we sat there and we said, okay, now we've got to come up with a new name, even though we've made this NAS name so huge.
Yeah, really.
In our mind,
we broke them in the Southwest. Right?
That it's going to shatter. This is going to be on the news tonight. And we sat there and said, what can we call ourselves now? And the obvious thing was to make it a big, dark, heavy name. And I remember the Husky Baby sandwich came up.
There were
90 miles per hour.
How did we ever pass on that?
I don't know.
A million names.
There was a million names. And we were sitting there and
what were some of the other names?
Oh, I remember 90 miles an hour was one. They were just every dark thing we could think of was Creep Show, stuff like that. And I don't think any of us remember how it came about, but the idea was go the other way. Let's go the other way. What if it was a name that they're not expecting? What if it's an little old lady that lives down the street named Alice Cooper? It could have been Mary Thompson or Rebecca Friedman, but Alice Cooper came up, and that name stuck.
Alice Cooper kept coming back. We kept firing off a barrage of ideas.
And then somebody said, but if it was Alice Cooper, and then it was like, well, yeah, but da-da-da-da-da-da. And then, Alice Cooper could be written like, and pretty soon it just stuck.
Well, we did that with every single name.
For me, the difference was I went home skeptical after the first night that Alice suggested that. And then when I got home, I ran it by my parents. I said, we have the band has a new name. They're like, what is it? And when I said Alice Cooper, the look on their face was cemented it for me. That's what it's perfect.
Yeah, it really irritated a lot of people.
I remember that the next, after we'd been kicking around, we used to go over to Bonnie's and her mother's, and for some reason we all ended up over there
At the same
next
time,
day
yep.
and thought it was a great idea.
We all agreed on it the same day. It was just like, you know.
And it was revolutionary. Nobody had ever done that. Nobody had ever really gone that far out on the limb to call yourself Alice Cooper, and nobody's named Alice, and they're all guys.
Well, I thought it was interesting because it was a name like The Who. It had never been used before. It had a pop element to it. It had, like Alice has always said, a very all-American element to it.
But it had the sinister thing too. You know, you'd think Lizzie Borden, Baby Jane, Alice Cooper. It had a rhythm to it.
Which I think those were names we also considered too.
But also, we were at the time really pushing the limits of our theatrics, and we were very much into shocking people. And so
Exactly.
now we had a name that would shock them before we even stepped on stage.
Yeah, so it fit. Once we became Alice Cooper, and I'll tell you, the very first show we played as Alice Cooper was at the Santa Barbara Fairgrounds.
Yep.
It was with Blue Cheer and Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Neil still had his cast.
I still had the cast on from the hunting incident, the alleged incident.
It was an accident.
Coming back.
Trust me.
It was a
Sawed-off 22.
But,
sawed-off 22.
But we showed up, and I remember I had some kind of a pink clown outfit on, full with the big bows and everything like that, and blue makeup that
Tidy
was just
bowl.
in white and all this hair, and all the guys, you know, put stuff all over them, and you know, and Glenn had chicken bones in his hair and things, you know, and
Glenn would always take ashes, put in his, and put
yeah,
ashes.
he would go like this. He'd just smoke a
Take
cigarette.
a cigarette, put it, put his. He always had makeup with him all the time.
And it was a Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Blue Cheer, and us.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper.
And we thought, oh man, we're going to put the world, set the world on
Yeah.
fire with this new Alice Cooper thing. Of course, we played to kind of a moderate reception, but
Well, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band liked us.
Yeah.
Nitty Gritty Dirt Band loved us.
Oh, they did,
That
but-
look
Oh, yeah.
was the next major time that look really made an effect on people was the Lenny Bruce birthday party at the Cheetah. Now here's the Cheetah. Now we're the house band there. So Sherry Cottle somehow got us to the point where we were going to go on next to last or last, which was after the Doors, after the Buffalo Springfield, after
Iron
all these
Butterfly.
It was 6,000 people there, and we come on, and we are full out at this point. We've got nothing to lose. Let's go for it, right? Everybody in LA is at this point into acid and into end the war. Everything's groovy and oh man, I feel so good about myself.
Kill the pigs.
And all of a sudden the lights come up, not down, up. And there's these clowns on stage. And we started out with Out in the Street. You know, and we were 3 times louder than anybody and terrifying. And they couldn't get through the door fast enough. People were scrambling, trying to get out there because their acid was like, all of a sudden, you know, the devil just showed up.
They would
you know.
yell insults and head for the exit.
had a
And I
door,
remember
too.
looking behind me because I thought there was a fire or something.
And they were running, trying to get out of the door. It was actually like a hazard, you know, to try to get out out as fast as they could. We cleared the room in about 3 songs. And, you know, that's when
And Shep, you were there at that? Was that then? I've heard it.
Vito's dancers,
Vito's
some of the
dancers,
GTOs.
The GTOs were screaming for us. So
right? And
we had
that's
the door.
when Miss Christine, we met Miss Christine, and she goes, I work for Frank Zappa. I'm his babysitter. And we went, do you think he'd like us? She says, he would love you. Good night. So that's when she talked to him. He said, come on over at 7 o'clock tomorrow, and we'll listen to the band. So, of course, we got there at 7 in the morning. Because 7 to me was 7 in the morning. I figured, you know, 7 is
When
7.
bands rehearse.
That was the last time he took care of the social calendar.
We were all in chrome.
So we stayed up all night boiling our strings and making our set list and stuff, and for the first time ever showed up on time.
Right. 7 in the morning, we're
So
set
we
up.
thought
Neil's
it
got
was
pink
on time.
drums with like bunnies all over them, and you know, and we started out. He wasn't even there. We just started playing, And I just remember him coming down the stairs in the basement with his coffee and his
slippers. He had big slippers.
When he
in a
looks
robe.
down, he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, you said 7 o'clock. He says, "At night, 7 o'clock at night."
Oh.
By this time, though, he was up. He sat down. He listened to us play, and he comes over and he goes, "I don't get it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I don't get it." He says, "The music doesn't make any sense." We went, "Is that good?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." He says, "I'm gonna record you."
That's all right.
Because I don't get it. He says, "It doesn't make, none of this makes sense." He says, "You have 5 songs that are 2 minutes long that have 48 changes in them."
And guinea pigs.
And I went, "Yeah." And he goes,
The guinea pigs.
"I don't get it." And he says, "Where are you guys from?" And he, and he was expecting San Francisco, London, or I went, "Phoenix." And he goes, "All right." We were living in the Chambers Brothers' basement during the Watts riots. So if we stuck our head out of the basement, the Chambers Brothers would say, "Stay down." We went over and met Shep. We decided he's our manager because, he was we walked into his room and there's Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and all these people.
Well, Zappa wanted to sign with his company.
Well, Zappa didn't know anything about Shep.
No, that's what we wanted.
We meet Shep. The next day we go to Zappa to sign the thing, and he said, "Who's that guy?" I said, "That's our manager." He said, "You didn't have him yesterday." And I said, "Yeah, I know. We met him last night." And Shep goes, "Okay, what's the deal?" I mean, it was like, but Herbie Cohen's going to be your manager. And we said, no, that guy's our manager.
Shep is.
And that was it.
What year is this?
This is 68. We had discussed that, as outrageous as having a band called Alice Cooper, what if we start calling our singer, called Vince Alice? It was talked about it until that story.
And then we went into Pat Kingsley, who was our publicist, and Shep went in and said, here's the guys. And she said, "I can't sell 5 guys as Alice Cooper. It's easier to focus on one guy, and that will sell everything, because we can make him, the interviews and all the stuff like that. And he looks like he would be some creep called Alice Cooper." So,
but it could have been Glenn, it could have been Dennis.
But it made sense. But up until that point, if somebody walked into the room and
said Alice, we'd all look over.
Said Alice, referring to an individual, that was a sure sign that they didn't know what we were into.
Right.
They weren't hip.
Right.
So,
it became what it was.
But for the good of the band and for the obvious thing that was happening anyway, that's what we all collectively decided to do.
We were staying at Doak's house at this point. Am I right? William Doak's said, "You can stay at our house." We're all living in the living room. And Doak was way too good looking to be, just a guy. He was but he was a very sweet guy, and he really took care of us. All the guys, I don't know what they were doing at the time to their heads, but I went to a birthday party with a real old girlfriend of mine, and I had never had a beer in my life. And these guys were all going, "Just wait till Vince gets here, because he'll be able to straighten us out." I was at the party, I had 1 Coors beer, and then I had another one, and I was blasted. So the knock at the door, and they're all sitting there, and they're all going, "Okay, everything's going to be okay now, because he's here." The door opens up, and I went, "Hi."
The trip guide is here.
I mean, our only anchor is smashed out of his mind. And actually, the first beer was a continuation of a lot of beer. That's when I drank the first beer, and it was a trigger mechanism where I drank beer then from every waking moment. You don't know if you're an alcoholic if you've never had alcohol. So, I mean, I still didn't really recognize the alcoholism till much later on. It just seemed normal to me to get up in the morning and have a beer rather than coffee.
The 2 or 3 years that Alice and Glenn and I shared rooms on the Pretty Few Easy Action, even through Love It to Death, in the mornings, because that was always the party room too, the floor would be covered wall to wall in beer cans. And from the people that came in to party with us, and we absolutely right. I mean,
we literally proved that you could live on beer.
The thing is, we had so little money that when we did get it, we didn't want to waste it on food or coffee.
Right. Because well, you could live on beer.
Yeah.
You know, and
We made it a food beer.
and
we drank
like,
this beer that was just called Alta beer that was like 35 cents a 6-pack.
Glenn Buxton had it down too, where you'd always sit at the bar because then you could eat the peanuts or pretzels.
We
You know,
learned-
and then
we
you
learned
could
all
save
the
all of your
tricks.
money for beer.
We went in the studio with Zappa, and what he told us was, look, he says, you guys do this stuff live. Really good. I want to do this album produced for you. I want to do it live in the studio.
What studio?
Whitney Studio.
In LA.
And,
Burbank.
and it was just amazing to us to be in the studio like a real band.
He said he wanted it to sound like, he said no baffles, and of course we didn't know anything about recording, so no baffles. He wanted everything to just sound like a band rehearsing in a garage and a car driving by, and that's pretty much the sound he got.
Well, we didn't really realize that it was because that's the cheapest way to possibly record.
Right.
We had been
Frank wasn't known for his extravagance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then he
or-
called in sick
or
like on the
isolation
first
either.
week, and then Herbie came down and slept on the couch. And
Right.
He was producing.
So I mean, we did all the songs live because we could. And then he said, I have an idea. He says it should be Alice Cookies.
Oh yes.
This is where we started running into
And we
problems.
went, Alice Cookies. What do you mean? You're going to make cookies now? And he goes, no, the name of the band. And we finally got to the point of saying, you know what, Frank, believe it or not, we're as serious about our music as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted people to know that we were serious
Yeah.
But
with the music that we were doing, you know. But that's what we really thought.
But you know, a song like Sing Low, Sweet Cheerio was actually a good little show-off piece for the band musically, because it had a jam part. It was a Chicago kind of shuffle, and the guitars, and I was really proud of that piece.
the harmonicas was great.
You know,
on
I mean,
that.
I sat there and I went, you know, that's.
But see, Zappa also wanted to take like a tuna fish can for Alice Cookies and have this was kind of maybe like thinking into the future, but he wanted to make very small discs. One song on each disc, remember
Right.
that?
Yeah, and
He wanted
have it
one song on each
inside a
disc, and
can.
then we had like 10 songs. There'd be 10 little discs in this can,
And they were like cookies.
and they were like cookies.
And we said, that's nice, Frank, but you know, we're really serious musicians.
Can't we have a real album?
Yeah.
The
We just
gatefold
wanted
and
a
everything?
real album that we could go, see, we have an album.
Yeah.
Well, what saved us is that idea would have cost money.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
didn't
the other
want to
thing that
spend
saved
any
us is
money.
now we had a manager to represent us
Yeah.
too.
Shep came in and he goes, no.
And Frank had the painting on the wall.
Well, they came in and they offered us this. I think it was $30,000. They said, we'll give you $30,000. Now, when you said $30,000 to us, that was like saying
it's like-
$30 million
That was
to
like
us.
a lot of beer.
We looked at each other and went, I mean, honestly, I was breathless. I went, you couldn't spend that much money, you know, but we want the publishing and the writing and everything like this. Shep goes, no, $3,000, we keep everything. We looked at Shep and went, we can take $30,000 and go to Europe and never see these guys again. What are you, crazy?
Of course, if we would have heard $3,000 before we heard
We would have
$30,000,
been
then
just
he
as
would have been
aghast.
breathless on
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
too.
taking it in a
Shep
heartbeat.
somehow knew that $30,000 wasn't as good as $3,000 and the publisher. I don't know how he knew this overnight, but he knew it. And he said, we'll take $3,000 for expenses just to keep ours alive. And we want the publishing. And somebody must have told him that the night before or something. Or Jimmy might have told you that or something. But anyways, we owned
Right. Yeah, I just want to
all these horrible songs. We own them.
They weren't
Can we
horrible.
sell them?
Here I am, I'm this hippie, I'm from Toronto, and I find myself sleeping in a flea bag motel outside of Pontiac, Michigan, because that's all we can afford. And I got the directions to go up to the farm, they gave me an address, and I drive up and down the street, and honest to God, there's nothing there. I'm checking my address, there's nothing there but an abandoned farmhouse, boarded up all across the front. So I finally give up, and I go up the driveway of the boarded up farmhouse just in case maybe I got it wrong and that is the place. And I pull around the back, and yes, there's cars back there and there's signs of life, and so this is probably the house where Alice Cooper is. I pull in and stop the car, and I hear this growling from the left side of the car right outside my window, and I look over and there's a three-legged dog growling at me. So I get out of the car and step gingerly away from the dog and go up to the house. The screen door is just kind of swinging on its hinges. And I walk into the kitchen. There's dishes and food on the counter. It looks like a scene out of Repulsion. It's a science experiment. There's stuff growing out of things all on the counter of the kitchen. It's like nobody's been here for years. And I go, hello, hello. I don't hear anything or see anything. So I go through the kitchen. There's kind of a beaded curtain. So I go through the beaded curtain, and I'm in a darkened room. I'm feeling for the light switch over here on the wall, and I put my hands on something that feels weird. And as my eyes adjust and I look at it, I realize I put my hands on a cock and balls with glasses on it, and right next to it is a bat with falsies, right? And there's a big bed. It's the living room, but there's a big bed in the middle of the living room. There's two creatures in the bed of indeterminate sex. I can't tell what's what. They just have a profusion of long blonde hair, except one of them has braided mutton chops. So I figure that's the guy, and they're both lying there in pink Dr. Denton pajamas. And there they are with the little Dr. Dentons with the flap on the ass and everything. Yeah. So and I back away. They won't wake up. There's another beaded curtain which appears to lead into the rest of the house. So I head to the beaded curtain, and as I part it, standing in the doorway is a 6.5-foot frog. I'm not kidding.
No, I know.
And who was that?
It was Dennis, probably.
Yeah, it was Dennis. Dennis standing there with a frog's head on. I'm looking at this guy, literally a 6.5-foot guy with a frog's head on. I look at him, I'm shivering, and the guy goes, ribbit. So, and then he backs out and walks away.
It was the end of maybe a little acid trip that he was on.
Maybe it was the end of
it was the end of an acid trip.
Maybe it was the end of something.
Somehow it ended in a frog outfit.
Yeah. Oh, man. So then I follow him out into, now that's the big sort of center room of the house, and it's at least there's lights on and stuff. And I'm looking around, I'm going, hello, hello, and I hear this sound from the left of me. So I look over, and it's a green monkey in a cage. Like, literally, it's green. And it's masturbating, looking at me.
It means he likes you.
It means he likes me. And this is my introduction to the Alice Cooper group. And then finally, somebody comes up, Mike Roswell, who was the road manager, right? Mike Roswell comes in with, rubbing his eyes. It's the crack of 3, by the way. And he's rubbing his eyes. It was a late night last night. The guys are just getting up. They'll be down in a second. So that was my introduction.
Love It to Death was our first time really with a producer in a studio. 'Cause to me, Pretty's for You and Easy Action were both Nas albums. Love It to Death was the first Alice Cooper album. I look at it that way. Because it was the first time the one thing Bob said to us is, everybody loves you, but you have no signature. They love what you do on stage, they love your image, but when you hear Alice's voice, you don't know it's Alice. When you hear Dennis's bass, you don't know it's Dennis. Neil's drums, Glenn's guitar. So what we worked on was 3 months in a barn relearning how to do everything. Taking everything down to the basics. Every time we did 18, we wanted to be the Yardbirds. And Bob kept going, too smart. And we go, yeah, but the guitar solo goes, too smart.
And
dumb it down.
And too generic, too.
Dumb it down.
Yeah. And
dumb it down.
And too generic.
Yeah.
It wasn't even dumb it down. It was like, the idea was to create this thing where you're the lead, you're the melody, and you're like the foreground in the shot, right? And then there would be this counter melodic thing, which would be the guitars and the bass that would go against you, and then the rhythm in the center that held it all together. That's how I saw it, anyway, in a very simplistic view that I had at that time. That it was 3 things, right? So it would be Alice singing, then there'd be the riff, which the bass and the guitars played together, if you remember.
Yeah.
Right? And then the drums going down the middle. And of course, then we'd have cameo appearances by other characters, lead guitars, and every once in a while a keyboard or something like that.
But you have to remember, we had never been in the studio with a producer.
And I had never produced before.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about it was, though, the most shocking thing to me was that we listened to you.
Yeah.
And I have, to this day, can't figure out why we listened to you. But we sat there and he'd say, okay, now we're going to take all of this out and it's just going to dum, 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 bum, dum, dum, bum, bum. We're going, it's kind of, so what, until you hear it on a tape and you realize that it moves you. The holes are what moves you, not all the playing.
Yeah.
We had 5 lead things going on, everybody vying for attention. For us to drop out was just so un-us That's what we had to learn more than anything else, was how to pull things out of our sound. We had no idea that the simplification is what made 18 strong. You know, but the one thing that made sense to us, I think, was that you'd say, when you hear the Doors, why do you know it's the Doors?
Right.
When you hear the Stones, why do you know it's the Stones? And he said, you don't have that. And we all agreed on that. We said, yeah, you're right. We don't have a signature. So that's what got our attention. That's what made me go, next progression is us listening about that. We need to do that. Yeah. When you hear Alice Cooper, you've got to go, oh, Alice Cooper.
The first song we worked on, in my recollection, was 18. We were all together in the barn. You remember how much you guys put me through. I mean, everything I said. They razzed me. They teased me about my hair.
Well, you're Canadian.
They called me. They referred to me in the third person feminine. They kept saying, "Isn't she cute? Oh, don't you love what she did with her hair?" We had a great experience in the studio in Chicago. It was the Chicago Mid-America Studios, RCA Studios.
Yeah,
you remember?
RCA.
Right across the street.
Well, the fact that we were in an RCA studio.
Right.
You know, I mean, that I'd heard of RCA.
Yeah.
That was like such a big deal to me.
Yeah.
You know.
But we were treated really well there, and mostly because of Jack. Because Jack had been doing the Guess Who there, and so that was a star band, and they got star treatment. We got the harmonic of star treatment. We got their draft.
I just remember the process to me of really recording in a real studio was fascinating, and I remember I really didn't want to leave. I used to sit there and just watch. You know, you worked all the knobs. I mean, I couldn't take it in, but I was fascinated that I was in the middle of all this. And you'd say, we need a rewrite on these lyrics. I'd go, wow, okay. I'd go in the other room and go, okay, I got it, there. You know, but I mean, that was the first time that I was ever in a project that was like a living, organic thing. That was really important because we really felt then that we were on our way. And I still, to this day, think Love It to Death is our best rock album. That one or Killer. Sophisticated Alice came with Schools Out and $1 Billion Babies. We got sophisticated then. But true, raw Alice was Ballad of Dwight Fry. Still got a long way to go. Black Juju, Sunrise. That was just like, that was pure basic Alice in a club.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. Ballad of Dwight Fry was one of those moments where, you know, I mean, I never thought of me as being an instrument or as my voice as being an instrument. I never really thought about projecting the idea of what I was singing. It was always just to get to the guitar solo. And then we did Dwight Fry, and I explained to Bob who Dwight Fry was. Dwight Fry played Fritz in Frankenstein, and he played Renfield in Dracula. The little creepy guy that was scarier than Dracula or Frankenstein. And I said, nobody ever gives that guy any credit for being the scariest guy in both movies. So let's find out what his name is. We found out it was Dwight Fry. I said, and let's dedicate a song to him, because he deserves it. He was kind of like us. He was an underdog. So we did Dwight Fry, and Bob started pulling the craziness out of us then, you know. If he's crazy, if he's master, he's flies and spiders, then we have to get that.
Do you remember the chairs?
Put me in a straitjacket, piled a door on me and some chairs, and you know, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. It was pretty much me really wanting to get out of there. We did it 100 times. Love It to Death had everything. It was the album cover. It was all black and white. Love It to Death. It was grainy. It was glamorous. The band looked glamorous.
Transvestite-ish.
It was like transsexual, strange. You know, honestly, if I were a parent at that time, I would look at that and I would just go, no way are you listening to this. Because if you remember, this is 1970? It was very disturbing. And then the thing that was really disturbing was that the radio was playing it. It was anti-everything.
The thing about the first two albums was they didn't sound like Alice Cooper, but they were as crazy and theatrical and kind of unfocused as the stuff that was going on the stage. And everything. And what we did with Love It to Death was we brought all the music closer to the middle, closer to the center. Like the music was right down the center. Yeah. Great riff rock and roll.
Yeah.
The lyrics were where we put the personality and the theatrics and your performance.
Right.
And then when it hit the stage, then we put all that crazy stuff around it.
Yeah,
too.
all the uplighting and all the stuff that really made it look creepy, you know. And we were the sideshow. We were not the headliner. What we were not Cirque du Soleil. We were that little sideshow over here that you didn't really want to go into, but were fascinated and you had to go into it.
Yeah,
and then when you got there, you were a little embarrassed that you liked it.
Yeah.
And I think there were a lot of people in the business that were afraid to say they liked Alice Cooper.
It wasn't cool to like Alice Cooper on Love It to Death. It wasn't.
No.
But by the time we'd had a couple of hits, then it was cool.
Yeah, when Killer came out, and Killer was our sophomore album, I think, and it was sonically even more in your face, and the songs might have been a little bit better. Then you're sitting there going, well, wait a minute. Now, these guys should have gone away last week. When we put Produce for You out, the great review I'll remember of all time was they called it a tragic waste of plastic. And I thought that was the great, you know, I went, wow, what a scathing review that is. When Love It to Death came out, it was something haunting about this.
Yeah.
There's something really good about this that you can't deny. The reviewers really did like it. The straight reviewers still were way good. The jury's way out on this one. Until the sophomore album came out, and all of a sudden, gee, that was the 6th biggest selling album of that year, was Killer. And it was like every musician started going, wow, listen to Halo of Flies. Yeah. These guys do this live.
Working out Halo of Flies was one of the most incredible experiences I ever had.
It was 9 songs.
It was.
And you know why we wrote it? We were so tired of people saying to us, you're great at the 2-minute, 3-minute song and out, and you're really not players because you have to depend on this theatrics to get you by and this and that. And we sat down and said, we need to write something that's going to make them go, huh? We can't play that. But I remember we were doing Unfinished Suite. Unfinished Suite was about a guy that went to sleep after he's getting his teeth pulled. And he has this other dream about being a spy. Now, when it got to the guitar solos, it was I Spy theme. The other theme was Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Right.
And the other theme was ding 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 ding.
James
We
Bond.
had 3 guitar solos going on. They intermatched, and they all matched up. But for us to learn those, Glenn already knew them.
Yeah.
He knew every one of those theme songs. He could also do Beverly Hillbillies. He could do Leave It to Beaver. You know, he didn't know 18, but he could play. But he could play, you know, I Dream of Jeannie, you know.
It's true. And actually, there's a good story for Unfinished Suite. We needed the sound of the drill.
Yeah.
We have this drill on the record, and
which is the most frightening sound at all. If you hate Dennis, is the real.
even if you don't hate Dennis. So we literally sent Alice to have a dental appointment. Do you remember this?
Yeah, we had a mics all set up
and we
here.
mic'd him.
I was numb, and they were like, you know,
yeah.
Did you get that?
So on School's Out, because we were getting that theatrical, we decided to make an album that was as consciously theatrical as the stage show, right?
We got more sophisticated.
Yeah.
But I don't think we really lost our guts on that. You know, I mean, the songs were still gutsy, and they were still Alice, and they were still really signature. You'd sit there and go, oh, it could only be Alice.
Yeah.
That could only be Alice.
Oh, I agree
But
with that.
School's Out was the one song, the only song we ever did that I went hit. That's the only song that was absolutely no doubt about it.
Yeah, and to his credit, by the way, Shep knew that from the time he heard the first riff, and he called me on the telephone. I don't even remember where I was. I may have been back in Toronto, but he called me and he said, the guys are working on this song. You need to get out here right now. I think it's a smash. So I got to, I think we were in LA at SAR, right?
Yeah. We actually started writing that song in the Canary Islands.
Really?
Yeah, when we had a little vacation off of, you know, we had a big tour going, and we went to the Canary Islands.
I can't imagine you guys in the Canary Islands.
Sitting there, and that's where it started.
What were you doing?
We never left. We sat in the room. We went to Canary Islands, and we didn't go outside. We didn't go to the beach. Everything. We sat there playing
and drinking.
Yeah, and drinking. You know, we weren't beach guys. Dennis and Mike and I didn't go out and lay in the sun. You know, it was all of a sudden this School's Out thing.
Wow.
It was like I said, well, I remember how it started. I said, why does my generation work? Because everybody can relate to it. what is the one thing that everybody can relate to? And we went through Christmas, Halloween, blah, da, 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 da. So what about the last 3 minutes on the last day of school when you're watching the clock and you know that when it finally gets to 3 o'clock, you're out for 3 months of freedom? I said, is there any time that's more of an explosion of yes than that 3 minutes? We capture that 3 minutes in a song, and we've got something that everybody relates to. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
We finally found something that nobody had done that really made sense.
So I got there, I heard the riff, and I heard the, well, we got no class and we got no innocence. It's like, oh, please, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And we
that
can't even
so
think of
good.
a word that rhymes.
Well, we didn't have that yet because we couldn't think of a word that rhymes, and we finally, at the end of the day, just went, okay, we can't even think of a word that rhymes.
No, I met Paul Rothschild, who did all the Doors and Love and all these bands. He told me, he says, when I heard that line, I was driving in my Porsche. I pulled the car over and stopped and said, that's the greatest line I've ever heard in my life. He says, better than anything I've ever heard. He says, yeah, I just sat there and thought about it for a second and said, that's it. That's the greatest lyric I'd ever heard. And for coming from him, that was a great compliment to me.
It came together really fast.
Yeah.
It was like, we caught a wave on that thing and it was ready to go. Then we had to start filling in all this other stuff around it.
Well, we liked the idea that the bottom of it was bolero. It was enough Yardbirds for us, where we went, yes, you've got a little Yardbirds piece in there.
Yeah, but your reference on Bolero was Beck's Bolero.
Beck's Bolero,
right? And my reference on Bolero was Ravel.
Yeah, right. We were thinking
the original Bolero.
Yeah.
Anyway, and actually this was part of what was good about our collaboration is that your cultural references were all based on modern media, and mine were based on some eclectic mix of classical and folk and all that other junk.
Now here was another. We were talking about how each guy was a lead player. We're at rehearsal one day. Neil comes in. He goes, "Listen to this." And Dennis goes. So the drums wrote $1 Billion Babies.
Yeah.
The riff on the drums was the basis for $1 Billion Babies. We had the idea then. At this point, we had money, and I said, "How silly is this? That we are the #1 band in the world right now because of School's Out and because of our image and all this. And people that hated us before are throwing money at us. And somebody said something like, yeah, like we're $1 million babies. I said, $1 Billion Babies. We're $1 Billion Babies. And that was just stuck. I said, that's such a good title. Let's keep that, $1 Billion Babies. And we wrote that song and then wrote everything around that. Well, if you remember now, we have not taken a break.
Right.
From Pretty's for You to then. I mean, we really hadn't taken a break. Like you said, it was recording, touring, and we all drank all day. We didn't really realize we needed a break from each other. We were getting to that point now where everybody was becoming a pretty big star. You pick up a magazine and Neil's on the cover, and Mike's on the cover, and Glenn's on the cover, and stories about Dennis on his own, just things like that. And everybody separately was a star.
Yeah.
And there's Alice. And of course I got the major attention because I was Alice. And I was willing to get up at 7 in the morning to do interviews.
Right.
Somehow I had the energy to do that where the other guys would not do that. It started causing a little bit of a...
Yeah, well, there was a bit of tension in the air. I remember it at the time because Alice was getting all the attention. The big media attention was really going Alice's way.
Well, it was easier to sell one person than 5. That's how Carolyn Pfeiffer looked at it and Shep looked at it. And I represented the band, and I was still splitting everything 5 ways. I mean, I didn't get more money than anybody else, but I was doing most of the work when it came to promoting the band, which was all day.
Yeah.
When I would get with Carolyn Pfeiffer, it started at 7 and didn't finish till midnight. Yeah. And it was 25 or 30 interviews a day, nonstop. It was really killing me.
It wasn't as easy a record to make as School's Out was.
No. Now the guys all of us that were kind of like, we'll do anything to get a hit, were in a position of going, well, now we can be a little more choosy. Now we can be a little bit more, well, we're stars now. I mean, I never played the star. I honestly never played that. It was not in my nature.
And that's absolutely true. Never once, not once, and not even to this day, has Alice ever
Well, I was a team player.
Played a star card.
I was always a team player. And I said, well, if you guys think that, okay, let's do it. But Bob thinks this. And I always referred to Bob because I said, guys, you got to remember what got us here. Is the guy that knows our music as well as we do, maybe more, is this guy Bob. And when Shep would come up with something, I say, what got us here is Shep working his butt off to get us to that place. These two guys are as important as any one of us. So let's listen to what got us here. Let's not just pretend like we know it all, because when we thought we knew it all, we didn't have anything.
The song Generation Landslide, to this day, I think is one of the greatest lyrics that's ever been written. It's absolutely brilliant.
It was written in about 8 minutes. It was a flow of consciousness.
You're kidding.
I started writing, and it just started coming to me.
I hate you.
No, honestly, it was the fastest song I ever wrote. That one and Only Women Bleed are the two fastest songs I think we ever wrote. I think it was one run through. And I went back and went, let's change that word, and I showed it to the band. They were working out, the whole musical thing on it. And when I was listening to it, I was just kind of flow of consciousness. And I looked at it, I said, wow, I can't think of anything to change on this.
We get to the end of it, and we got to have this, there's the sound to the big ending. That solo thing. I knew what I heard it. I heard it before it ever got recorded, and by this point, Glenn was not responding that well to direction. Certain things he was doing great, but some things, we'd get a brain lock, he couldn't do it. So we had Steve Hunter ghost for us on that, and he played that secretly. That was really, but what a solo. So we did have guests on, now on $1 Billion Babies, so we had Dick Wagner guested on the record, and we had Steve play on it, sort of forming relationships that would go on later on to be very, very important to you and to me.
Dick Wagner and I ended up writing a lot of songs together after that. Muscle of Love was next. $1 Billion Babies was number one. Our first number one.
But the tour was nuts, wasn't it?
Talk about the $1 Billion Babies tour was finally, we had the money just to do anything we wanted to do. We brought in Joe Gannon. Joe Gannon had been with us before, but now he had the money to do what he wanted to do. And we built this monument to Alice that was just, nobody had ever seen anything like this. Nobody had ever used down lights. Nobody had ever used very lights before. He knew all about these very lights. Nobody had ever used lighting like that, ever. So our show suddenly took on this demented Broadway show. $1 Billion Babies. When you stepped on the step, it would light up. But the music was so good. The stage show looked so good. And we sold out Wembley like that. We did the show, filmed the show in Wembley. I mean, that's when goth was born, pretty much. I mean, all of a sudden, kids on the street were wearing top hats. And they had black under their eyes. And they were wearing they were like all undertakers. Nobody had ever seen that before until after $1 Billion Babies. Then all of a sudden, kids were dressing like Alice, and it was a phenomenon. We were bigger in England than we were in the States. I mean, we were actually bigger there. Immediately, America noticed it. So we were big in the States, but we got bigger because England was so crazy about Alice Cooper. So I mean, then came back to the States, and this tour went on forever. $1 Billion Babies went on. That was one of those tours that almost broke my back, because now I wasn't drinking as much beer. I was drinking more whiskey now, and the tour was getting more and more intense. We had our own jet. We had Flo and Eddie was opening for us. He had a #1 album. Of course we were going to be decadent. We were $1 Billion Babies. We were already making fun of ourselves, calling ourselves $1 Billion Babies. We got the joke. We're looking at each other going, I got $5,000 in my pocket right now. And you throw it, money everywhere. And, because we weren't used to having money at all. But, we'd get off the plane, there'd be 2-3 limos there waiting for us. With champagne in the limos. We were leading the ultimate decadent rock star lifestyle. Getting out of $1 Billion Babies, everybody was just burned. It was a very successful tour. Like I said, we broke all the records all over the world. We've been out for a year and a half.
Right.
You know.
But in those days, you played almost every day. I mean, you guys were playing.
We played 6 nights a week, 5 nights a week,
Yeah.
big arenas.
Yeah.
You were in Dallas one night and Houston the next night and da-da-da, but it were all big shows. Muscle of Love is when the band started splintering. Everybody started wanting to write their own songs. You could tell by the songs on the album. There were songs I didn't like on the album, but he wrote this part. We'll do it. By now, Bob is out of the picture, which is, against my will, but I only have 1/5 of the vote. And everybody's very happy with this album. I listened to it and I found no continuity in the album, but there were all these different songs. They were very New Yorkish kind of songs. They weren't, to me, very Alice-ish at all. But coming off $1 Billion Babies and Muscle of Love came out, and it did okay. But that to us, doing okay was like failing. So that was when all of a sudden everybody sat down and went, okay, we're either going to break up, we're all going to do our own albums, and I said, you want to do your own albums? Maybe we need to break up for a while. Just everybody do their own album. Muscle of Love almost was a non-entity to me. It was sort of something that I don't remember any of. I didn't have any connection to it. It was just putting out another album to me. It was a good album, but it didn't have any thrust to it. There was nothing holding it together. It was like 12 good songs. Well, at this point, I'm thinking, Welcome to My Nightmare. Let's really go for it. They thought $1 Billion Babies was going to be big. Guys, Welcome to My Nightmare is going to be so much bigger. And everybody's sitting there looking at me like this, like, we want to split the money up rather than put it all back into the... I could totally understand that. We had always put the money back into the show, and it was time to cash out. Best thing about Muscle of Love was the packaging. We decided that Muscle of Love was going to be taken a lot of different ways. We pre-stained the package, in a plain cardboard box, so it looked like it was pornography. And then when you opened it up, it was these 5 guys that was at the Institute of Nude Wrestling. And of course, when they get on the girls in there were gorillas, and they beat the hell out of us. And the next picture on the other side was us all beat up and everything with black eyes and bloody noses. It's like sailors on a leave. So, it was really a great graphic package. Still one of our better graphic packages. The album didn't live up to the package. It was not the producer's fault. That it was the fact that everybody in the band wanted to take charge on a different level. We got another album that was kind of like Easy Action. It was sort of scattered. Some good songs, some good parts, but not really cohesive. And that's the best I can say about it. When that album just did okay, that's when everybody kind of felt, uh-oh, we're done. We had our day. And probably they were right. But it's because we went away from our formula. These guys never were out of each other's sight, ever, since we were 16 up till Muscle of Love, from 1966 to 1974. When we finally did hit it and made the success and got big, it was very odd to see everybody drifting off in different directions. But I think it was almost welcome. There was this certain amount of it that was just like, I'm just tired. We've done everything we can do. Is there ever a time when you stop, go to Disneyland? It just wasn't in the cards. You have to do this when you're hot. You do everything you can while you're hot, because who knows how long it's going to last. But none of us ever thought about, well, maybe we should take 3 months off. That just wasn't part of it. And so when I came up with Nightmare and I started working with Bob again and started working with everybody, it was kind of odd for me because I wasn't with my band. It is like going to school and college together. You're with people since kindergarten, and you get through college together, and then there's that day when you graduate and you look at each other and go, well, where are you going? Well, I got to go try to get a job here. And you split up. And the next day you go, well, where is everybody? And you're on your own.
Alice Cooper. course not, you silly goose. It's those sequins. Alice Cooper in concert Saturday, August 5th, 7 p.m. at the Akron Rubber Bowl. Alice Cooper in concert Saturday, August 5th, 7 p.m. The Akron Rubber Bowl. Tickets now on sale downtown at the Central Ticket Office. Richmond's 37 North High Street.
Warner Brothers Records and Tapes proudly presents the most dangerous album in the entire history of the record business. It's called Muscle of Love, and it took Alice Cooper to come up with it.
Who's the queen of the locker room? Who's the cream of the crop? Holy muscle of love.
One short workout with Alice Cooper, and no one will ever get sand in your ears again. Muscle of Love. Outstanding. And it is wild. Records.
Opinion. Here is what the noted author and naturalist has to say about Alice Cooper's latest movie.
Ever read a movie? Many parts are edible. I call good to see you again, Alice Cooper. My Back to Nature movie. It's natural, a good taste, reminds me of wild hickory nuts.
See some rather unnatural acts in Good to See You Again, Alice Cooper, the film that outgrosses them all. Rated PG.
And that's now showing exclusively at the Center One Theater downtown. There are matinees every day.
There are stops on Asian streets, and decent Americans everywhere lock their drawers and draw their drapes. Else rock and roll kingpin Alice Cooper continues his bloody vengeance on underworld violence in a bid for total control of all rock and roll. These state and authorities are Alice Cooper's greatest hits. Alice Cooper's greatest hits on Warner Brothers Records and Tapes. America's most public enemy is still number one. Telephone is ringing. You got me on the run. I'm running in my corner. It's just a big
Alice Cooper, such a lovely child. A pity though she's so violent. Mr. and Misdemeanor, middle of the road.
Alice Cooper is unisex, raw, together and violent, just like you, fellow American, because there's a little bit of Alice Cooper in us all. Now look, you wouldn't really want to take a thing like Alice Cooper home to mother, would you? Alice Cooper, their new album, Easy Action, all for you on, you'll forgive the word, Straight Records.
Alice Cooper, the sound of third-generation rock.
Sunrise, filling up the hollow. Sunrise, filling up the hollow. Sunrise, filling up the hollow. Bringing back the warmth to the ground.
Love It to Death, a new album by Alice Cooper.
I get confused every day. 18, I just don't know what to say. 18, I gotta get away.
On Warner Brothers Records, featuring 18, Alice Cooper, Third Generation Rock.
I'm 18 and I like it.
Dear Alice Cooper, every time I play your group's records in the house, my mother gets mad at me. When you were playing here last April, me and my sister had to sneak out because Mom and Dad wouldn't let us go. But it was worth it, because Alice, I love you.
She struts into the room. Well, I don't know her, but with a magnifying glance, I just sort of look her over. We have a drink or two, well, maybe three.
Alice Cooper's newest album on Warner Brothers, Killer.
Is ringing. Telephone is ringing. You got me on the run. I'm driving in my car now, anticipating fun. I'm driving right up to you, babe. I guess that you